Hello and welcome to 24 panels per second. As you've probably guessed, this is our Supergirl episode, our 10th episode of the season. Liz, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this film. It's been a few weeks since we last did this. I think in May. We were due to come back for Spider-Man Noir, but we neither of us had time to finish watching it. So we did go to see Supergirl though, and that's the important thing. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. You may notice that Liz and I are drastically different heights this evening. This is a problem that we solved a few weeks ago, and we've now managed to unsolve. So sorry,
Right.
one of us will look like a diminutive dwarf.
Yeah, you can be like, Ant-Man and I can be
yeah.
Giant Man.
That'll be it. That'll be it. At least we're on. We're in theme. So there you go.
Well, no, different franchise,
Or whatever. Or whatever. You sound like all the people that used to walk in the shop going, "Well, actually."
I think you'll find.
Supergirl. We haven't got a synopsis tonight. Sorry, it's all been kind of very thrown together. We did this one at the last minute, guys. This is the latest film, second only film in the new DCEU, as sort of stewarded by Peter Safran and James Gunn, directed by Craig Gillespie, written by Anna Nogueira. I hope I've said that correctly, and starring Millie Alcock, Eve Ridley, Matthias Schoenaerts, I think it's pronounced, and Jason Momoa. So Liz, Supergirl. This one has been controversial.
Oh yeah, it was controversial before it even came out.
Yeah.
People have been just kind of waiting in the wings to pick it apart, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a strange one. It's obviously, I mean, the box office on the film has been very low. Although I'll get into a couple of things about why we probably shouldn't worry about box office. And I think it's the negative kind of word of mouth on it has affected the film quite badly, as I think have a few other things. But dealing with the film as a piece of art itself, in and of itself, what were you expecting going into this?
Well, I mean, hoping for, expecting. I knew that it would be kind of really leaning into the Tom King Woman of Tomorrow storyline, which is probably like the most beloved modern day Supergirl story.
Yeah.
And is kind of like hailed as as a sort of definitive Supergirl story. It's beautiful. It's like it sort of redefined her character. She's a character who, if you're not really into the Superman lore, if you're like a casual DC fan, you might not know some of the nuances of her character. And I feel like Tom King's take on her added a lot of dimension and really kind of like dug into who she is.
I think it's very much Tom King's take to, and his idea to put her, to make her a sort of party girl, an occasional party girl in Woman of Tomorrow, right? I mean, that's where that comes from. Although
it is, I think they really
different.
Yeah, I think so. In Woman of Tomorrow, it's her 21st birthday, and she goes to this red planet to sort of get drunk, have a celebration, and go home. I think they kind of in the film. I think maybe kind of leans into that more. Than we see in the comic, because in the comic, I think it's really more just like that opening scene where we see her carousing in a bar. and after that, it's more of a journey adventure story.
Yeah, and very much if again, and it's been said thousands of times, I'm going to say it again anyway. If you want an equivalent in any other medium, it's True Grit. It very much is True Grit in space, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I've seen both versions of True Grit as a film, and it's fantastic both ways. The book itself leans a bit more into the quasi-religious language that Charles Portis's original novel of True Grit has. I don't think really that anyone could say it isn't True Grit, because it very much is so close, adheres so closely to that storyline.
Okay, interesting, because I've only seen True Grit once years ago, and I didn't make the connection. So, for me, all of that would have just gone right past.
Well, I'd say for this, just to kind of build the analogy in people's minds, in True Grit, you have Rooster Cogburn, you have Matty, you have the state trooper played by Matt Damon. So in this, Supergirl is Rooster Cogburn. The state trooper is Lobo. Matty is Ruthie. And the villain they're all going after is Krem. So that I mean, it's a really basic kind of lift. Now, whether or not Tom King knew that or was doing that on purpose, I don't know. I kind of don't care. It's that they're so similar. It's kind of, but I'm not saying it as a negative. I think if you're going to steal, you should always steal from great works. Remake crap works, steal from great ones. I think is a fine way to move along in art. And I'm absolutely fine with it being a rip-off of True Grit. I don't think that's a detriment. Anyway, sorry, go on.
As to whether, and who knows, whether he, it was inspired by that or, it just happens to be some of the same tropes. I mean, so I going into watching Supergirl, I knew that it was going to be, sort of drawing from Woman of Tomorrow, as its main source of inspiration, which it very much did. And also, it was like, okay, and Lobo's going to be in there, we'll see how that, how that makes sense, and how that works out. And, I was excited for that. I was excited, to see her take on Supergirl, because we, I enjoyed what I saw of her at the end of Superman last year. And, you kind of knew that it was going to, that there were going to be, you were going to be dealing with this, like, sort of this, kind of hell-raising party girl, Supergirl, who's like kind of the opposite of, Superman and his, like, sort of like, aw shucks, Kansas, gentlemanly, young man. And I, those were the only things I really knew going in. I had seen one trailer, which looked fun, and so those were my sort of expectations, I guess. Just these were the things we'd be seeing, and how those things would mesh together. Is what I was interested in seeing.
I mean, I was just hoping for a good, entertaining picture, as I'm always hoping for. I do get quite excited by the prospect of a lot of these movies. I do get caught up in a lot of that. However, these days, I always say I'm interested. I'm not excited, because I think that the interest is the main thing. You have to kind of be interested in those characters. You have to kind of be interested in what's going to happen on the screen. You have to be interested as a movie. I wasn't I'm not always looking for a solid kind of 100% adaptation of whatever comic or whatever character. I don't mind them playing around with characters and things like that. I think sometimes that's essential to creating a good movie. Again, you have to look at what Marvel's done with all of their adaptations. Really, they've tweaked quite a lot. There's very few. I mean, Doctor Strange, I think, adhered really closely to what that was, and Thor adhered fairly closely. But I think they've been free to kind of play around with some of that stuff, and I think that's fine. Different. It's a different audience, and even if everyone who loved comics went to see every comic book movie, nearly every one of those movies would flop because there aren't as many comic readers as there are and there aren't, but in terms of American comics,
sure,
like
yeah, so
it would be a few million people, and they would make some money, but they wouldn't do the money that kind of people expect from these things.
Right. Okay, I think which is maybe your roundabout way of saying, like, it's Woman of Tomorrow is the inspiration, but it's tonally it's quite different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely, this is like an action blockbuster film that has elements and characters from Woman of Tomorrow, but it's not a retelling of that story.
No, and it's very much not if you're expecting great displays of superpowers, I think you're probably going to be in for a surprise too, because the film is very much not that. It is about her being in a weakened state quite often. But I think the key thing here is the motivation for her doing what she does. So for her going off to these other planets where there's no yellow sun, and getting drunk, because she's a depressive character. She's going through a massive depression, understandably, and the film really is about her coming out of that depression, I think,
right?
Amongst other things,
Right, sure.
So I found that quite interesting, because depressive characters are always kind of interesting to see on screen. I think here it's very much clear that she is depressed, and they make a very kind of easy connection between the alcohol consumption and the depression. But also you can put it down. I've seen a lot of complaints about her being a kind of party girl and this sort of thing, and I don't know how you were in your 20s, but I remember what I was like in my 20s.
Sure.
And I knew a lot of girls who were like the same way I was, which is we would drink heavily, and you'd go out and you'd get blitzed, and then you'd do it again as quickly as possible.
Right. And her curse is that she has to go to another planet to do that,
But I certainly think that's representative of what a lot of people would have gone through in their 20s.
And they make a big deal of the fact that it was like her birthday and everything. So
yeah,
that's what she's doing with her birthday. I mean, they do very quickly, give you a conversation between her and Clark. So there's actually quite a lot of Clark in the movie. More than I thought there would be. And very early into the film, you see like kind of a phone conversation between them, or something. I can't remember. It's probably not a phone conversation, but something equivalent to. And he's kind of trying to say, "Oh, well, when are you coming home?" And she doesn't want to give him a straight answer. She's like, "Oh, well, eventually."
Yeah, and I think the thing is, she's running away from responsibility. She's gone to Earth. She knows that she has all these powers. I found her story is obviously a little more tragic than Clark's, because, as she points out, her Krypton wasn't destroyed in a day. Her Krypton sort of linked on for a few years, and in a way it sort of borrows very slightly from the Absolute Superman. but only very slightly. So their city, which is what's their city called? Because I thought it was going to be Kandor, but it's not, is it?
No,
It's
I'd have to ask.
Argo.
Yeah, Argo.
Argo, I
Okay.
think. It sort of separates off from Krypton, and her family watches Superman, watches Kal-El leave, and they're kind of quickly enclosed in some sort of safety net where they get to float through space and survive. However, that survival comes at a massive cost, as we find out throughout the film.
Right. Ultimately, it ends up just being like a slower death.
Yeah.
For everybody, because like the whatever's powering it, or is made of kryptonite, or I can't remember exactly. How I think it's poisoning the soil.
Yeah.
So basically everyone's getting sick, and she isn't getting sick yet. Maybe it's because she's younger, but it seems like her mother, was very afflicted by it. At a certain point, and you were sort of led to believe that everybody eventually who stayed there was going to get sick and die.
I was
poisoning.
I was kind of curious about that, and it was a bit frustrating that it didn't explain that really as to why she didn't get sick. But what was really interesting was her reaction to finding out. Oh no, we can send you off to another planet. We can rebuild the spaceship that sent Kal off, and we can adapt it for you, because she's a much older character than Kal-El was. She's in her teens when they send her off, and her reaction is, no, I'd rather stay here and die
with you,
with my parents, which was I kind of feel as a character trait, the depression was already there. I think she just is a character with depression, and what happens to her, of course, exacerbates it. Exacerbates it. And yeah, that's the sense that I got looking at it, is that depression was then exaggerated and made so much harder by everything else that's happened to her. So by the time we catch her, she's not, as I said, the film doesn't really show her using her superpowers a staggering amount. She's also not in the costume for a whole lot
much at all. Yeah.
Which I think is done, by the end to allow.
Right. Yeah. It's a visual, sort of symbol of her change of heart. Her stepping up to her heroism. Yeah.
Actually,
responsibility. Yeah, both. But yeah, I think it is symbolic. You see it in the beginning, bunched into a ball on the floor, and she doesn't. I mean, I think they have. Ruthie has there's a conversation between her and Ruthie about the suit before she sort of dons it, where she said it's just a suit, but obviously later she rethinks that.
I think very much Ruthie's sword and Supergirl's suit are the same thing. The difference is that Ruthie picks up the sword very willingly and very quickly. We should say that Ruthie is kind of her and her parents and her brother are sort of homesteaders, very much in keeping with the Western theme, and they unfortunately encounter these brigands led by Krem, played by Matthias Schoenaerts, and her father is a sword maker, and the brigands have come for his swords. He doesn't want to give them. He does actually. He is willing to give them up, but the brigands seem to want, more than he's willing to give, and they kill him. They kill her son,
mother, her brother.
And Ruthie's the only one left alive. They also blow up the brigand ship. Ruthie's family managed to blow up the brigand ship, which is key for something that happens a bit later on. And Ruthie goes looking for allies. Yeah. Well, she's sort of seeking
right, like a sort of protector, or basically like someone to a travel, sort of companion. Some muscle.
And what she finds is Kara drunk in a bar. And Kara does involve herself in Ruthie's problems, but only temporarily. And Ruthie is then kind of badgering her. She wants someone to help her on her quest. And in that, they run into Krem again, who attempts to steal Supergirl's spaceship, and in the process poisons poor little Crypto.
Right. So Crypto, poor Crypto. In the last movie, his life was in peril, and that was like a key point in the film. And in this movie, his life is in peril, and that's a key point in the film. It's like, you're gonna give this dog a break.
Yeah. I hope in the next movie they do give him.
In the next movie, he better just be completely fine the whole time.
Well, there is a risk in making the dog the star of the show every time. That is
right. He was notably the scene stealer of the Superman film, so keeping him out of this one for most of it, and having him be, obviously, they need to give her a motivation, and this follows along with the plot line from Woman of Tomorrow, where Crypto's injured and she needs to find Krem to get essentially the antidote.
Although, isn't there a thing in Woman of Tomorrow? I can't remember if this is correct because it's been a long time. I haven't read it since it was out the first time. And isn't there a thing in Woman of Tomorrow where it turns out to be a bit of a hoax, where she uses the dog as a sort of motivator for Ruthie to find Grant, or but the dog's actually fine.
I see. Okay, I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'm sure I can't remember if they sort of fake Crypto's death, and then they use that to kind of motivate Kara. It's been so long since I've seen it. Hopefully, if someone's out there and can remember, obviously, because I actually don't.
Yeah, I should
copy
reread.
Of Supergirl. Yeah,
right.
I only have a copy of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow here, so I can't reference it. I can't check. But if you know, feel free to drop us a line in the comments.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people are reading this book for the first time. They just put it out in a DC Compact edition, and at my shop that we've been selling loads of copies of it.
I love it. It's such
a good book. It's such a good book.
Yeah, I've just put on order the issue 1 DC WIP edition, the great big black and white original art version.
Yeah, her art is incredible. It's so beautiful. It's so visually stunning, and they don't, I think, and I wonder if there are people whose criticisms of the film are people who just wanted it to be more like Woman of Tomorrow.
There could be that. I've stayed away from a lot of the criticism.
Me too. I honestly, because I hadn't seen the movie until yesterday, I didn't read, really anything, any reviews or even anybody's internet rants or anything like that, until after I had seen it. And even then I haven't had time to, look at the internet rants. I can probably assume some of what's being said. And I know that Dean Cain made some horrendously inappropriate remark on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah.
And made himself look like an idiot,
First of all, there seems to have been a lot aimed at Minnie Alcock's physical appearance, which you always get with these types of films. I'm not sure how interested people of my age should be in the physical appearance of 23-year-old women, or whatever she is, 22-year-old women.
Right.
Right. But I don't think she's an unappealing person, like an unattractive woman.
No.
And I don't know how. One of the things I wrote about in the sort of non-spoiler review, which I'll put in the description, is that I don't know what's happened in the 40 years since Aliens, but suddenly we've decided we don't want attractive women in space. I don't understand what the issue was. I think there was a lot of stuff aimed at her character, the Supergirl character, not Millie Alcock's character. What I was really shocked at was the leading kind of Hollywood newspaper, not newspaper anymore, because why would you print anything? The leading kind of Hollywood newspaper, Variety, seemed to be having quite a time picking on her and the film in general.
Really?
Yeah, they seem to.
I wonder why that is.
The latest one seemed to be about the fact that she said, I don't watch Spider-Man or comic book movies. She said, I don't. That's not. I probably shouldn't say that, but I don't. And you know what? I think that's absolutely fine.
It is fine. She's an actress. She doesn't need to be a fan of know all these properties.
She has to play the part. I doubt Brie Larson sat there reading tons of fucking comics or or
I mean, a lot of the actors who
why would
go
you
into these films, right? Exactly. Not everyone is Nicolas Cage. Not everyone is in love with the source material and dying to play that character. I think for her it's a role,
and although,
and I think she plays it really well. I want to go ahead and say, anybody who's trying to sort of pick her apart, you really can't knock her acting in the film.
No, I think she is, and I think the good thing is they've picked someone who's pretty close to what the character is supposed to be, which is a young woman on the cusp of bigger things, trying to deal with the responsibility that's coming at her. I don't think Millie Dowler, she doesn't strike me as a depressive, but that's acting. She
he gives a nuanced performance. You can see that she's sort of this tragic character who's kind of like numbing her pain with all this kind of good time behavior, and then it's not getting her anywhere.
And her drunk acting is no worse than any other teen film I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
And I've seen a million of those things, and you've seen a million of those things, because we grew up in the era when they were kind of at their height. I don't think her drunk acting was any worse than that. I don't think her acting was any worse than any of those films. I've seen her in other things, and she's been really good in them, notably the TV show Sirens on Netflix, and
House the Dragon. I know
House the Dragon is the big one, So I don't know what the issue is there. There was some pretty mean things being said about her face and stuff like that, and I just think,
it's pretty pathetic. It's like, I mean, she's like, an attractive young woman, and I think, the fact that she is not playing up to, sort of the archetype that they, this faction of the internet thinks that she should be playing up to, it's very, reductive.
Yeah, people wanted a darker movie after Superman, apparently, because this is what infuriates me about DC fans, is they seem to only want quite dark. Which I don't understand that. Like,
I know, haven't we had enough of that?
Well, I think there's room for both. But I think Superman was very geared towards a different type of film.
I mean, Superman was exactly what it should be, which is,
Yeah.
The tone of Superman was exactly right for Superman as a character, in my opinion. It was like all of the things that, like I think make that, character what he is, the brightness, the hopefulness, the, sort of aw shucks, like gee whiz, kind of sweetness, and I thought it was a great film, and this I think is a darker film in many ways than Superman was, certainly.
Definitely.
It's more mature. Like, I went with one of my friends who has a 10-year-old, and she hadn't seen Superman, and she asked me like, oh, I was like, oh, I think that would be okay for your kid to watch, whereas this I would not recommend a 10-year-old watch.
Well, in particular, there's one plot line that I was very surprised that they went with it, and I can't remember if it was in the Woman of Tomorrow book, but the whole kind of trafficking young girls was I was really kind of
right. It's very
okay.
Yeah,
that was not. I mean, it's very timely, and I think made the film more resonant because of that. And I'm not displeased it was there. I was just surprised.
Right.
And I think it added a tone to the film that was in keeping with the other themes that were already there. Because in my opinion, and again, I'm fine for you to discount this or to anyone to discount this. Supergirl, Ruthie, and Lobo, and to a certain degree, Krem, are the same character. They're all orphans, who have had to deal with whatever they've had to deal with, and are all dealing with it in different ways. Admittedly, Lobo brought about his own on purpose.
He did.
Ruthie did not ask for what happened to her. Kara very much would have welcomed not being an orphan, but the other option for that was much grimmer. I suspect Krem doesn't have parents anywhere waiting for him.
There's not a whole lot to know about Krem, to be honest, except he's like an evil guy who is evil. So this is a problem that I had with the film, is that, as far as villains go, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot there.
But did you need it?
I mean, well, I would have liked it. I don't think I needed it, but it was I felt like that was something that I felt could have been rounded out a little, like, okay, beyond just being a jerk, a real bad guy, like, what was his motivation?
Well, I think the motivation is money and profit, and tick box. I quite enjoy hurting young women. I think that was it, and I think that's it. And I think that sometimes,
and that was like good enough for you, like
yeah, because we've seen Thanos explain away.
I mean, sure, yeah.
We've seen
Loki or something.
They all explain.
I know that they don't all need that kind of dimension.
No,
but it was.
And also, in keeping the film quite short.
Sure.
Like this was like an hour and 40 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
In keeping the film quite short, I think great. Yeah, you don't need motivation. You just need to see what he's doing. That's where the bad guy is. Go get the bad guy. And I quite like that. And also, I will have to say, because yes, this borrows heavily from True Grit and from other films that I'm sure we'll get into in a minute. Ultimately, all those films are borrowing from westerns, and westerns at their height were just very simple, just massively simple. I think, as with a lot of films, like I always remember George Romero. Like I saw this documentary once from George Romero. and they were talking about, you know, all the complexities and things that have been added to his films looking back, how they were about this, how they were about that. I think, I swear to God, he admitted, I'd love to find this documentary again. He was just like, look, we weren't thinking about any of that when we made the films. We just made them, and then people added on that stuff afterwards.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And
I mean, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, every film has to, you know, sort of have like a, you know, like this, you know, incredibly thoughtful, well-rounded villain.
No, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that either.
But you know, I felt like, well, I mean, you know, like, does he, you know, what is his motivation to be that mean? Like, you know, like he has to go like chase like there's like a whole sequence where, like, you know, like he has to go chase this little girl, like, you know, like,
well,
with,
because
you know,
he's not
around. He's you know, like, well, I can't let that stand. Like, you double crossed me, so I better go kill this little girl. Like, when all this melee is like happening around him, it just seems like, you know, just ridiculously.
Because also, I thought what was interesting about that is it goes to the heart of a kind of internalized cowardice where he takes himself out of the main fight, where he knows he's probably going to get trounced by either Lobo or Kara. He runs off to chase one little girl. But I really, I was really, again, surprised the film went.
This is like a, you know, it's not a major issue for me, but, you know, it's a quibble. And I have a few. I mean, that's not the only one.
Okay, I actually want to hear about your quibbles because.
Okay. All right. So, Lobo.
Right.
You know, Jason Momoa, like, born to do it. You know, he essentially already is Lobo. You know, they just had to put some makeup on him, you know, and then just let him be Jason Momoa. Like, it was, you know, spot on. Loved that. However, he's just there. Like, there's, you know, like you could erase his entire role from the film and it wouldn't change the film at all.
Yeah. Okay. I think I kind of agree with that. But
now that's too bad, because I think that there's like a really interesting way that they could have made him integral to the plot of the film.
In what way? Go on.
So I mean, instead of having him be, you know, just sort of like, oh, well, you know, I also happen to be, you know, sort of chasing this other bad guy who happens to be nearby your bad guy. Like, he's a bounty hunter. Have him be chasing the same guy. Like, you know, and then there be a conflict between them. They're both after Krem, but, you know, he's got his reason and he wants to, you know, take him away because he's a bounty hunter.
Okay.
And they, you know, they're going after him for their reason, and, you know, so put them into conflict with him, you know.
But do you not think that would have robbed you of some of the stuff at the end?
Because then eventually they, you know, obviously they'd eventually team up, you know, eventually they'd have to work together.
But I mean, what it would have robbed us of. I don't know if we really want to jump to the
end. You mean the end? Well, yes. I mean, you know, like, have him like do like a slightly honorable thing and like give up the bounty, like, you know, and say he's yours.
It's not even that. I just felt that Lobo would have been sure to kill him as a character.
Well, no, not necessarily. Not if the bounty was to take him alive. Let's say that, you know. And there's a lot of ways you could have played it, but I just thought it was kind of like, it just felt like a missed opportunity to not give him like, you know, sort of a role where he really had to interact with them, you know, because instead it was kind of like, oh, he just happens to be in the next cell over from Ruthie, and, you know, and like they bump into each other in a bar, but she doesn't even want to go near him. You know, it was just kind of like, well, what was the point of having him there if you're not going to really like use him properly? Like, because I enjoyed everything about him being there, but I felt like a little slighted in that it was kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed seeing him, but like, did he really enhance the plot? No.
Well, I think with characters like that, the danger is you could either use them too little or you'll end up using them too much. I think it's much better that they use him too little. It was fine for me. Like I didn't have a problem with it, but now that you've pointed these things out, it's like, oh yeah, I actually totally see what you're saying. But I think if you bring him on too much, he would definitely risk overpowering the movie with his personality. Because I suspect that characters like that are fun to write for. And I think there's a very easy trap to get into, which is you start going, oh, I really liked writing dialogue for him. I'll just keep writing dialogue for him, and I'll keep putting stuff in, and I'll keep putting stuff in, I'll keep putting stuff in. And you put more and more stuff in. And then next thing you know, it's not really the Supergirl movie anymore. It's the Lobo movie featuring Supergirl.
Right.
And I think that would have been a shame. And also, I think that just setting him up for other appearances or for his own movies is absolutely fine. This is what Marvel have been doing for years.
Well, it just, to me, it felt like that's all they were doing. When it's like, yeah. I felt like, okay, yeah, so here's like a commercial for the Lobo movie. But, I don't know. I just thought it could have been done more deftly, more cleverly, like, make him part of the plot. Make him part of the plot. Like, okay. A part that kind of furthers the plot in some way. And this is like, I totally enjoyed that he was there. I'm not mad about it, but I feel like there were a lot of those things about this movie that were like so close but not quite.
Okay.
And that's one of them. I felt like it was like, I really like that, but there's it could have been that little bit better. I feel that way about even the handling of the other two main characters.
So Ruthie and
Kara.
Yeah.
I feel like you got sort of a mixed message about who Kara is really. Ultimately, like, you kind of get, I think, more of a story arc for Ruthie than you do for Kara.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Kara's
like I said, I still think they're all the same character, and what's happening is they're just choosing to tell that story through Ruthie. And also, if you go back to the Woman of Tomorrow book, that's told more or less all through Ruthie's perspective. It's Ruthie that narrates that entire book.
Sure, yeah, no, I mean, it's not a bad thing that her character gets an arc, but I don't think it should be stronger than Kara's arc. And I don't think either of them had particularly strong arcs, unfortunately, And this is not to say I didn't enjoy this movie. I did enjoy it, but like I think I would be disingenuous to say that I like felt like it reached the heights it could have reached. I feel like there were things that like could have been stronger. I think that and it's nothing to do with performances. I think it has a lot to do with script and direction. I think that so we will talk about the ending, but in a little more detail. But I mean, where I'm going with this, probably, in that, like, okay, we get the whole movie with Kara telling Ruthie, like, talking her down, like, basically, like, oh, you're not a killer, you'll lose your soul, all this stuff. And then at the end, she does, essentially what she is trying to dissuade Ruthie from doing throughout the entire film herself. And what is that statement? Like, is it saying that she's already too lost to be saved? Or, and I mean, so I had trouble with that message, I guess.
Yeah, and I can see why. I think, in a way, that was Kara getting her wish, in that, where she said to her parents, I want to, I want to die with you. I think, in a way, that was the last vestiges of the kind of old Kara being killed off. And she'd already kind of gone through that sort of semi-literal death of, being taken to the planet that has both the great green and yellow suns, and being absolutely poisoned by the green sun, which I really liked, by the way. I thought that whole sequence was great.
That was cool.
And I think partly that was the ongoing kind of death of her character. I think that it, much like when you get to the end of Man of Steel and that version of Superman has to kill Zod, there wasn't really anywhere for her to go with that. She would have had to get rid of him. And also, I think as a character, he pushed her into it.
Well, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to die. I think he did. I think he did deserve to die. But I think I just had an issue with, her fervency, to, Ruthie, that, it was wrong and that she'd, have to live with it forever, and that it would, it would destroy her.
But also, one could say that she is being what the Superman family characters are, which are protectors, and she's protecting Ruthie from that pain by taking it on herself.
Right,
she's kind of saying, I'll actually take on the burden of this guilt. You don't have to. You can still go off and be a good person. And I'll take this burden on. And I think that's also fine. I don't mind it. I think, I don't know where.
To be honest, and I'm arguing, about it, but it was very satisfying to watch her kill Krem. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was, happy to watch him go.
Every one of those guys needed to be, it was like,
right.
I think by the point where they're kidnapping,
but it was I think it was I sort of see what your point is, but it was kind of like her moralizing about it, and then
well, she only said Ruthie didn't have to kill him. She didn't say she wouldn't.
Right.
She absolutely, she was adamant about Ruthie not killing him.
Right.
She wasn't adamant about herself not killing him. I saw one thing was like, oh, well, why did they have to turn her into the Punisher? And it's just like, what are you talking about?
That's quite a far cry from,
What are you talking about?
Right, it's ridiculous. But
what are you talking about has been my reaction to most of the kind of negative push on this film.
What is besides Billy Alcock and her appearance basically, or what are the other things people are complaining about?
It wasn't one of the Justice League characters.
Okay.
They feel that Gunn should be concentrating on the Justice League characters. He's making one complaint I saw was he's making Phase 4 films in Phase 1, and it's just like, yeah, but that's because he's gone through all that already with Marvel, and
sure.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with finding more idiosyncratic things to make. I believe that he didn't expect to be doing two super family films in a row, and that
he's doing 3. That is which is weird. It's going Superman, Supergirl, and then Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah. But I don't think he wanted that, and it was just that this script was ready, and I think the authority had fallen out. There's a few behind the scenes shenanigans that I've been reading about with this film. First and foremost, that there were 2 competing cuts of the film. One was Craig Gillespie's, one was, I think, not Gunn's, but Warner's cut.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided there wasn't enough in the scores between those cuts to really kind of decide it in the end. There was so they put out their version. This is very much the studio version So apparently,
Okay, that doesn't surprise me because, like,
Yeah.
Craig Gillespie is a good director. He's like,
he's an interesting director, and he's an
Yeah.
idiosyncratic director.
right. And I didn't really like feel like this was like, it really screamed of being a Craig Gillespie film.
No. Also, I think the script went through very last minute rewrites from the guy that had written the Authority movie.
Okay.
Which was done at Gunn's behest from the sound of it. They can never get the test scores up above the sort of low 70s. I mean, I don't really give a shit about any of that, to be honest. I think ultimately, and I think that what interests me is, I'm going to talk a bit in a minute about how I think they fumbled the marketing on the film.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think far too many of the fans, and I can be guilty of this too, right? So and I think you can, I think we all can, but I think far too many of us now think that we're running the studio, or that we're shareholders in Warner Brothers, or that we're somehow executive. And I blame the whole Snyder Cut shenanigans for this as well, where everyone suddenly was like, I'm an executive producer. It's like, you are fucking not. You threw in $10 to a Kickstarter. Okay. I'll give you another example. Star Wars is whatever the people making Star Wars say it is.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. Everybody's, I mean, and I get it. It's like, I think that, a Supergirl film should be this, and, somebody else thinks it, but ultimately it's the people making it who get to say what it actually is, because that's the film.
And also, unlike things like V for Vendetta, where there's only been one version of V for Vendetta to adapt from, and there's only been one version of Watchmen to adapt from, there have been millions of or thousands or hundreds of Supergirl books. There have been thousands of Superman books, thousands of Batman books, and therefore you can take whatever you need in order to make.
And you also make like your own, I mean, like look at everybody like losing it over Superman's parents being like, the bad guys essentially in Superman, that his Kryptonian parents wanted him to, rule Earth. Like, people are way bent out of shape about that, but it's like, I'm sure it's happened in the comics. I'm sure there's been comics like, even if they're Elseworlds or something like that.
It was a main plot thread in Smallville.
Sure, there you go. I mean, I know you're intimately familiar with Smallville as of recently.
Well,
but,
I am. I've been rewatching it and quite enjoying a lot of it.
I haven't watched it in years, but I would revisit it.
I might even finish it. I'm 8 seasons in. I might finish it. But. And I'm not saying we should all be sucking corporate cock and kind of going, oh, thank you, Mr. Warner Brothers, for giving us this. Thank you so much. But I'm also telling you, you don't have to go and see it.
No, of course not.
And I think a lot of the negative word of mouth in this film started quite early.
It started way before the film came out. I mean, I think there were just people looking to find fault with it. Here's the thing: it's not a perfect film. It's an enjoyable film. I enjoyed it. I think it had some problems. Like, I think story wise, it had some problems. I think it just, there was like a better film in there somewhere, and I thought it was a good film, but it could have been, I think a few tweaks to the script, plot, would have strengthened it. I think a clearer like arc for her character would have made it a better film. And I think that like you have good elements, just make them a little more cohesive. And this is like me, like being the person, like as you say, I've, this is my executive producer, hat saying like, this is what you should have done.
Well, this is what I'm
Which is
gonna...
like, I mean, but this is also the point of these films, is for people like us to sit around picking them apart and talking about them and saying what we didn't like.
The point I want to make with the whole fucking producer thing and marketing thing is that I think we are beginning to lose the ability to just look at the piece of art by and of itself. We should not be worrying, really, as cinema goers, as just a cinema goer, you should not be worrying about Warner Brothers' bottom line or how much they've spent on marketing or whether or not they're doing it correctly or whether or not this is going to ruin the entire DCEU. You should just be going to see a film. Okay?
Which a lot of people are.
Not enough, apparently, looking at the way the film's kind of plummeted box office wise. Now, but here's the other thing. Until a film comes out, no one really fucking knows what it's like. None of us know. And I think a film doing poorly when it comes out can only really be caused by a few factors. One of which is they've released it right in the middle of the World Cup.
Right.
Which I think was a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's a World Cup widows thing, but I'll get to how they've cocked that up as well.
Right.
You know, the women who aren't into football and
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the elements I liked in the film were I liked Millie Alcock, I liked her portrayal, I liked the storyline. I thought Eve Ridley was great.
Yeah.
I understand she's done a few things before. This is the first thing I've seen her in. I even like Momoa, who is not my favorite in any film.
I mean, but he's perfect for Lobo.
Yeah, and he was really good. And again, I support Jason Momoa as like I think he does a lot for like green issues, and he's apparently a good guy. But you know, we've discussed it before.
Right, he's not your cup of tea. Yeah,
he's not my cup of tea. But I'm not going to launch into like slagging him off because I think that's probably just as bad as as people sitting there going, I don't like Millie Alcock's face. You know, I think it's just as fucking juvenile and pointless. I liked Matthias Schoenaerts.
Yeah, I mean, what else is he in? He seems he's very familiar.
He's a Belgian actor. He's done a lot of French films. I think he was in a really good movie, but that actually turns staggeringly depressing and actually made me really upset by the end of it, called The Race and the Jailbird, with Adele. I hope I get her name right. I can't. But one of the women who was in Blue is the Warmest Color.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So where she plays a racing driver and he plays a bank robber, and she doesn't know what he does for a living, and it's like it was a good kind of interesting sort of movie, and I really like that. But it gets very depressing.
Okay.
He's done a lot of French movies. I've seen him in things. I can't remember off the top of my head what I've seen him in apart from that. He's really good. So
you like the performances?
I like the performances. I liked the Star Wars coterie of aliens that were in it. I think they made a ton of effort in that.
Yeah.
Yes, the whole film is like everyone complains. Funny enough, a friend of mine was talking to me going, "Oh, fucking James Gunn just does the same thing every time. It's all Guardians of the Galaxy," and this is remarkably Guardians of the Galaxy. It has a lot of the same.
It is.
Yeah,
it does. You know, I mean, that's something that you could level as a criticism, I guess. But it's like it's a space adventure. I think that there at this point is almost like this like kind of house style of like, you know, what a space adventure looks like, and I feel like it just doesn't try and reinvent that. It just you know.
I liked about it, and I liked how much they humanized all the alien characters. Because ultimately, you have to make it communicable to the audience, and I think that's what they did.
I thought that was well done. I thought, like, you know, you know, and I think that bore some similarities to what things you saw in Woman of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like them sitting on the bus and she's next to some gross guy who smells, who is drooling on her shoulder, and it's also very relatable. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
I enjoyed all that. Excuse me.
And I thought that there was some really poignant moments in the movie too. I thought that the whole sequence with when you go into her backstory and you have to see her say goodbye to her father and all that. It was sad and relatable, and her then winding up on Earth and having to learn the whole language from scratch. You see these things that made her who she is and why she feels alienated and why she's avoiding going back to Earth. So I thought that there were some really touching moments. I thought that maybe that could have been explored more. I don't know. I felt like if they had changed the plot structure to kind of give her a little more of an origin.
I actually think the film could have worked even more. I think if they really wanted a slam dunk, I think instead of looking at Woman of Tomorrow, what they maybe should have looked at is the Jeff Loeb and Michael Turner Superman Batman run that introduces Supergirl again. Do you remember that?
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, where Clark has to deal with being a sort of teenage girl that likes shopping and being this extremely attractive teenage girl whom everybody is men are kind of leering at, and that was all kind of earthbound.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if they wouldn't have had a better time putting some of that in and making just a slightly longer film, but giving us more of that. And that I feel would have then reinforced the kind of whole trafficking storyline, because they're all about the male gaze. That's all about,
right.
you can only assume those girls were ending up as one thing.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, they're referred to as brides, and it's explained that their whole purpose is to, propagate this race of all male heirs.
Yeah, I just absolutely gross.
Yeah, it's super gross, and
but sadly, super recognizable from today's headlines.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Here's where I think they cocked the market enough. So, one, releasing it during the World Cup, and also, so it's a film about a young woman. Sidekick is a young woman. They rescue young women. The script was by a woman. I think that this film was not marketed at women.
Right.
I think it was marketed at DC fans, and they were what they spend a lot of their time trying to do is win over this sort of male audience, and you then end up with loads of comments from what we can charitably call the manosphere, but it's just a bunch of freaking arseholes sitting on the computers, and I actually think they should have gone completely the other way. They should have just gone, fuck that audience. Don't give a monkeys. Don't care about them. So we're not going to bother. And here's what I would have done. Now, obviously, this is going to be like old man trying to prove that he's still...
he's still got it.
He's still got it. But here's what I would have done. Pick me some female icons from today. Taylor Swift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dua Lipa. Let's say since they put a wet leg, a needle drop in there, mm-hmm. I would take the I can't remember her name. I'm really sorry, but the young woman that fronts Wet Leg. And I don't know, Olivia Rodrigo or Jenny Ortega, right?
Okay.
And
Yep.
here's what I would have done. Here's
Okay.
what I would have done. I
Yep.
would have taken the enormous marketing budget for that film, which would have been about the same as the film cost, about 150 million, right?
Yep.
I would have spent 50 million paying those women to do an event where they came and watched the film and they gave away tickets to young women who were in their fan groups, because all those women have a ton of young female fans. I would have said, yeah, come along to this event. I would have found the biggest freaking screen, like 1,000-seat cinema that they could find. And then I would have got them to watch the film, and then I would have then got them on stage to do a Q&A about how great they thought the freaking film was. I'd have paid them all to do it. Got them on stage to do a Q&A about how fucking great the film was. And I would just let all those young women do the work for you of marketing, because I guarantee you they would have talked to their friends, and then they would have talked to their friends, and then they would have talked to their friends, and they would have got a massive showing from the young female audience that this film needed, and they would have, and it would have done just okay, and I would have just ignored all the sweaty fanboys like me.
The problem is, like, you know, the movie itself, I feel like, you know, was made more for the sweaty fanboys than it was for the young women.
Well, I don't know. I think that
I think, like, you know, kind of a lot of the big, like, you know, sort of like cool moments of the movie are like Lobo showing up, and, you know, I don't know. I don't see it as, like, I see it as a female led comic book film, but I don't see it as like a real, like, I don't know, female audience film, you know, for people who aren't, you know, already superhero movie fans.
Well, I don't think that's right. I mean, I think the young male fans would have got into it anyway, because they would have had to go. Because if any of them have got girlfriends and they're being pressured into go, like, I want to go and see this.
Whether they go or not is the point. It's more like what they would, you know.
I went in on opening day and it was empty. It was empty, and I just don't think they did enough of the hard work in the lead up to this film.
Okay, I'll agree with that. But I still wonder, like, is it really, like, marketing it at like just a general casual, like, young female audience? Would this film resonate with them the way it does with, like, pre-existing fans? I don't know.
I think it would have, because they would have caught into Ruthie's journey and Kara's journey and the journey of all the kind of captured young women. I think they would have got into it.
I don't know. Like, obviously,
and at least if they'd done the stuff early enough, they would have been able to tell Warner Brothers straight away what was wrong with the film and where they needed to put more of that stuff in to get them into the theater. And I that's how I would have spent my $150 million, is getting very famous women with huge fan bases to come and watch the movie and say how great it was.
But maybe then make it more of a film for young women. That's like, you know.
I think it had everything that you would want from it had all the needle drops. It had.
Well, see, okay, I do want to talk about the needle drops. I think that again, like, you know, I think it's one of those things where, like, you know, it's like James Gunn's known for, like, the needle drops and everything.
Sure.
And I thought in this film, some of it worked and some of it didn't. For me, like, you know, I thought that sometimes it was like letting the music do some of the heavy lifting, you know, where, or just, like, you know, something that just felt like weirdly out of place in certain scenes. Like, I thought the Jimmy World cover, you know, during that big crescendo of the film was a weird choice. It kind of took me out of it. You know what I'm talking about?
I liked it. And that is actually given speaking of marketing, that has given us one of the more kind of organic moments of marketing. I don't know if you've seen on social media. So the young woman who did that cover was a singer who has no label. She's got no kind of backing or marketing money behind her, and I think they just found her on TikTok or something like that. And I think she performed that song, and James Gunn just went, "Yeah, we'll have that." And she has done these really sweet, nice little videos saying, I just want to thank you for letting me have this chance and letting me go.
I mean, that's very sweet. Lovely. That is very sweet. Did I enjoy it in the film? Not so much, but you know.
I didn't. I have a fucking problem with it. I mean, at the end of the day, I just.
I mean, again, this is like me being like, you know, just sort of unnecessarily nitpicky, I suppose. But I like, you know, I feel like I want to see him move away from that a little bit. And, you know, I don't want every James Gunn related film to be like, you know, completely soundtrack driven. And, you know, I thought that Superman got away with it. I thought that, you know, with Guardians, I was on board whole hog. I thought, okay, this is like kind of what he does for these films. Okay, cool. But I don't want it to become, you know, just a by default, like, oh, I'm going to see a James Gunn film and it's going to be, you know, loads of the major moments in the film are you know, going to rely on
an
edgy song.
Also, you have to accept that it's just what films are nowadays.
Well, I don't know. I don't think that the Marvel movies do it, or, you know.
Yeah, true. But I think that if you look at, like, a lot of that comes from streaming movies now. Like, streaming movies are full of that shit.
And I'd lay that same critique on, like, you know, a lot of movies. And I think there are films where it's used to great effect. I think, like I said, the Guardians films, I think it really works for those films. They made it work for those films. And there are other, you know, like countless movies where I think, you know, okay, like the soundtrack is, you know, it's you know, part of the film that, you know, makes it what it is. But I also see just kind of like a pattern emerging that I'm kind of like, oh, I hope he maybe breaks away from that a little bit, because it can be distracting too. You know, it's kind of like, well, you know, I remember that, like, you know, like Modest Mouse, one of my absolute favorite bands. They, like, you know, like played this Modest Mouse song, you know, in the middle of Supergirl, and I was kind of like just taken out of the movie by it. I was like, this doesn't really fit with this scene, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of humanizes quite exotic environments, because as much as it kind of draws on things like Star Wars, it isn't Star Wars.
Well, yeah, and I think score, you know, should be more used to, you know, sort of greater effect. In really, one of these films.
I like the score. The score is done by an artist called Claudia Sane, who has done.
Well, you know, believe it or not, there was 3 different people who worked on the score. Like, you know,
I heard about this. Yeah, so they changed composers quite a few times. The one they ended up with was Claudia Sane. She's really good. I liked her kind of. I've listened to it separately from the film. It's kind of an electro pop score. Again, it's very much in keeping with the feeling, if not the actual music from Guardians of the Galaxy. But you know, again, zero problems with it.
I liked the score. I liked the score, but I just, I feel like, oh, you know, I thought there was, like, you know, appropriate moments in the film, you know, for the soundtrack to be big and bombastic. Like, you know, at the beginning of the film when she's partying, all, you know, she's using the jukebox, like, all that makes sense. But there were a few, you know, other moments here and there where I thought, like, oh, it just kind of took me out of it. You know, where I would have rather see, you know, like a, you know, sort of big score, you know, crescendo instead.
Yeah, I don't know. I had no problem with it. I probably won't revisit the film again until it's on HBO. Just because, you know, the cycle of stuff is moving very quickly. We've got Spider-Man is in just a couple of weeks now. which I get. I'm really looking forward to. This isn't as bad as I had been led to believe it would be.
It's not. It's like, I know I've been like, kind of picking it apart a little bit, but I did actually like it. I do think it's worth watching, and I thought it was like, it'll be like a fun rewatch, like, between like, I'd like to kind of leading up to Man of Tomorrow, probably, I'll probably rewatch Superman and this, to jazz me up for that film, because, I think it's not as good a film as Superman. I think that's like, and I wasn't really necessarily expecting it to be, but I do think it's good. I think it doesn't deserve a lot of the, the like criticisms that are being leveled at it. But I think, it's worth noting that there are things to criticize.
Sure. I agree with that. Yeah. I think the general aftermath tone, even though it came out last Friday, aftermath, oh my God,
right,
has been, how can they save superhero cinema? And
shut up. It's like,
but my thing is, like, who cares, man? Who gives a shit? How can they save Western?
I mean, they've been saying this sort of thing for years, like, like, oh yeah, it's all, I mean, and maybe I'm part of the problem because I'm doing the same thing right now. But like, I think people like to, complain about, like, I didn't like this movie, so I guess it's all downhill from here. I mean, which I'm not never of that view. I never think it's all downhill from here. I think, I always think like, oh, okay, I liked this, maybe I didn't like this. But I'm really looking forward to see where it goes from here,
And also the thing that people are having to deal with now that they can't seem to cope with is that it's become like any other genre, which is you're going to get highs and you're going to get lows, and you're just going to get middles.
And then sometimes you're going to get in between, like in
and if superhero cinema was to die tomorrow, it would not matter ultimately, because you've still got hundreds of other types of movies out there that you can go and watch. Like, I don't know what people.
I don't know what I do with my life. I mean,
you just rewatch all the ones you've already seen, and that's fine. That is absolutely fine. You know what I mean? I think people have got to, what's the great quote from Endgame? Part of the journey is the end, right? So people have got to stop treating it as doom and gloom. If it happens, it happens.
Right. Sure.
There's other movies.
Yeah, and I mean, like yeah. Like,
and ultimately, in such a young medium, it's just over it's 130 years old now. Cinema, something like that. 130 years old. Guess what? The Western didn't go away. The musical didn't go away. The science fiction film didn't go away. The costume epic, the historical epic didn't go away. Biblical films didn't go away. None of it went away. It's
and none of it will. I mean, it's
none of it will.
Right. So people just and it's like already we've seen like the DC universe be like reinvented twice in the last 15 years, and
I would say
it's there's gonna even if this iteration of Marvel movies ends, there'll be another one, or if this iteration of DC movies ends, there'll be another one. There's always going to be an excuse to like start up and cast a new Batman. I
wish these things did more for comics.
They do.
I think they do a lot, but they don't do enough. And
okay. What's your? I mean, I think that it's been tremendously good for comic shops. The advent of these films.
I think it's been good, but I don't think there's enough of keeping the pressure on with that, and I think there's lots more that could be being done. And I will say what I always say, which is go watch other types of movies too, and then go watch these, because I think well informed and well grounded cinema literacy is the thing that's dying. But it's all out there, guys. Go get it. You can get it quite easily. Just go find it. And maybe just don't be as hard on them as you like. Don't treat every one of these films like it's got to be 100% grand slam,
Right.
A1 prime brief every time. It hasn't.
True.
It's okay for a film to just be okay.
Yeah. And
you should be okay with that. There you go. That's my Jerry Springer.
All right, words of wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement, and I mean, obviously, like, the reason we're getting together to talk about this stuff is to talk about all the, different shades of good and bad. But on the whole,
I'm just here because I've got nothing better to do on a Saturday night except talking. This is how every weekend goes. But I'm kidding. No, I do always appreciate that we can do this, because I get to hang out with one of my best pals, and we get to talk about nerdy stuff, and I like that. We don't always agree, but I do like the fact that we get to do it. But yeah, we'll be back I hope we'll be back for Spider-Man.
We'll be back for Spider-Man.
In between, we might even be back for Spider-Man Noir.
We might. I'm about halfway through now.
I'm not even that far. I started watching it and then got distracted.
It's good. I had the same problem. I just had all this stuff going on, and I was like, Did
you finish The Boys?
No.
Oh, Liz.
I know. Basically, I'm waiting until I'm in the right headspace to finish The Boys, because I know it's going to be really full on.
Do you remember when we worked in Orbital, they stuck up a sign saying, "Ask Paul if he's read Secret Wars," when that was coming out, when Hickman's Secret Wars, because it wound me up the number of people that came in asking me, had I read Secret Wars, the new Secret Wars, the Hickman Secret Wars, and I began to get very, very frustrated. And then I wouldn't read it as a point of, almost as a point of stop fucking asking me. So here you go. I'm going to ask Liz the question that she's now going to get every week. Liz, have you watched Ironheart yet?
Oh no, I still haven't watched Ironheart. Yeah, I know, it's terrible.
I don't know how you've managed to avoid spoilers.
I don't know, man. I totally have, though. Nobody's told me anything about it, so
it's so frustrating. You have to watch it. Just watch the last episode.
I want to watch the whole thing eventually. Yeah. Okay. So it'll have to be okay. I'll go Spider-Man Noir. Probably Ironheart. Then maybe The Boys. I don't know. I feel like The Boys.
You're just going to dangle that in front of me for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So I think. Oh, Liz, can you talk about? Liz has got a new addition to her family. Do you want to mention? Is he in the room now?
He is in the room now.
But we can't. You can't bring him on camera.
I'd probably wake him up. He's so cute though. So I have a little kitten, and he's the best. His name is Lex, and he's like the cutest little thing. Yeah, I don't want to wake him up.
No, I've seen video of Lex, and Lex is a terrorist. So,
he's wild. He's wild man.
But I just wanted to get a mention of
yeah, I'll bring him on camera, sometime when he's awake. But he likes to chew on my headphones.
Yeah.
So the last time I had headphones on, he ripped them to shreds with his tiny teeth. So
there you go, folks. Don't go buy animals. We actually had a visit from one of the local cats today. And I usually go and see him. His name's Pappy. He lives at a house just not too far from here, but he comes to see us quite a lot. He likes to hang out by our hedge, because our hedge is enormous and there's lots of birds nesting in there. So he likes to come and see if he can nab a live bit of food. And I always stop him from doing that, but I couldn't let him come too close though, because it looks like he had a flea collar on. And I was like, no, thank you. I don't actually own any animals, so I don't want fleas. But we get plenty of local cats coming to visit us here, so it's always fun seeing them. Right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Check out thecomicrush.com for comic book news and reviews, trailers and whatnot. There is a Superman shop, dedicated Superman shop, so you can look at Superman and Supergirl back issues just in there if you'd like to. I'll put all the links for this stuff. I'll also put a bunch of Supergirl reviews for I think I've got one for the first issue of Woman Tomorrow that I did back in 2021 whenever it was out, and also for Supergirl Being Super by I think Mariko Tamaki and Joel Jones, and that's worth reading. Those are 2 good books, but I'll stick the reviews in there so you can take a look, and I'll put the non-spoiler review for this movie in there as well. Yeah, please do check us out. All the other episodes that are up and live now. Liz, thanks for doing this.
Pleasure as always. Yep.
Goodbye.
Bye.